Well, I don't know. In every case, the word that we always hear is unity, and we talk about unity a lot. But we have to be honest with ourselves that unity is really, really boring, and divisiveness is really, really exciting. We live at a time of great leisure where people have a lot of free time, and where do they spend their free time? They spend their free time on social networks, talking to each other in abusive ways, and indulging the impulse of divisiveness. And so it's not simply about, like, can we be unified? It's about teaching ourselves to resist the impulse of divisiveness, which is different because then once you resist the divisiveness, then you got to fill that hole with something else. And then you're forced to think about, well, what is that thing? What is that thing? Should I be reading more? Should I be thinking more? Should I be going to church? Should I be spending more time with my community? Should I be getting off Twitter and social networks and start talking to people? And should I stop marching and maybe start joining? These are things that happen. You know, you look at memorials. Memorials mark an event in history, and we don't do that anymore. We don't and think. We just keep rolling on and keep rolling on and keep rolling on. And I think that's why these things are such anomalies. It's like to sit there and listen. We don't do that anymore. Next week, we'll be talking about something else. You know it. In 3 days, we'll be talking about something else.
In 10 minutes.
In 10 minutes, in the B block.
Exactly. So, Juan, an opportunity here to spread some hope, some unity, connection, and also to remember and honor.
Without a doubt, and I thought that was what it was about. I was really appreciative of the fact that you had President Obama and President Bush there, because I thought it was an example for the nation of reaching across the racial divide. And both of them, I think, had to do, to my mind, a political balancing act, because, you know, I get upset when Eric says stuff like, oh, but President Obama had to mention Black Lives Matter. Of course, Black America wants to hear this president, our first black president, speak to the anguish black people feel about violence by police against black people.
At a memorial service
yes.
for 5 fallen
I'm telling
officers?
you, let me
Is
finish.
that the place or the time
That's
to do
exactly
that?
the place. If he didn't do it there, he'd be a chicken. Because right now, what we heard was that this murderous, crazy man, someone that the president, by the way, described as demented and filled not only with dementia, but racial hate. That's what President Obama said, that he was reacting to the previous examples and said he wanted to kill white people and especially white cops because of what had happened in Minnesota and Baton Rouge. So, Eric, you can't go into some fantasy
That's not what he said.
That's
I'll
exactly what
I'll quote him. I'll quote him. He said, surely we should be able to hear the pain of Alton Sterling's family.
Yeah,
That's a memorial to Alton Sterling, not to the 5 officers that they were there to memorialize.
Eric, let me just offer you something that the president said. It comes from the Gospel of John. He said, let us love not with words or speech, but with action and in truth. This goes back to what Greg was talking about, that it's not just about the words. It's going to take action. Just people sitting on the couch and listening and pointing fingers and saying the other guy gets it or doesn't get it and I'm right. It's about people actually saying, you know what, we got to heal America. We got to heal this community. We got a problem here. And if you say, oh, let's go to a fantasy and not talk about black people because black people's anger makes me so uncomfortable.
I'm saying have this debate, have this discussion, fix the problems, but do it tomorrow, not at a memorial service.
He's the president, right? He's the president of the United States.
That is supposed to be for those 5 officers
call the
and
shots
their families
about
and the city of
making a
Dallas.
speech and when it's appropriate to do so versus a funeral memorial for 5
If he went to the funeral for Alton Sterling and Philando Castile and didn't mention the horrors of people unfairly attacking police, the two of you would be going crazy.
Well, during these tense times, the spotlight is on President Obama's stance on race relations and the police, and what some say is a conflicting message.
I think I've really heard enough of the president on this issue, and I think most of the country has. Some people call it nuance, I call it equivocation. He has talked out of both sides of his mouth on this issue from day one. The cops acted stupidly in Cambridge, Massachusetts. We need law and order on the streets, but you need to sympathize or empathize with the Black Lives Matter movement and their grievances. He wants to have it both ways. What he's really done is play into this false narrative by winking at the Black Lives Matter movement, treating them as some sort of modern day, NAACP circa 1955, which they are not.
Greg, your thoughts on Jason's comments?
Well, 2 things. President Obama did bring up immediately the importance of the rule of law. And that's key here. Black Lives Matter, they have violated the law. They block freeways and highways. They keep people from getting home and stuff like that, and they see that as part of a greater mission. I think, there is a middle ground between Juan and Eric. There are deep concerns among the black community, obviously, about what is going on in this country. Black Lives Matter, to me, is by committee. It's Angela Davis in a mob. I don't think it addresses. When I hear Juan speak, I don't hear Black Lives Matter. I hear the traditional civil rights voice that one admires. I don't see Al Sharpton and Martin Luther King together in the same group. But somehow Black Lives Matter, in the world of identity politics, it has evolved into a tribal faction where they use grievances to dismantle our society. It's not about joining a community. It's about splitting it apart. That's what I see as the difference between Black Lives Matter and previous civil rights movements. Not that I'm any expert at this at all.
But you're trying.
Yeah.